Welcome to the video number 4 of the finMED Capacity Building Tool. I remind you that this online training is intended to complement and support the delivery of the Capacity Building Tool manual developed by the finMED project that you can download from the project website. During the previous video number 3, we started to examine the design phase, strategic policy. As you can recall, the most important aspects of the design phase are framework conditions, importance of context, investment priorities, ex-ante assessment for the introduction of financial instruments. In this video number 4, we will focus on the choice of investment priorities and on the ex-ante assessment for the introduction of financial instruments in the implementation of operational programs supported by the European Structural and Investment Funds, ESIF. The third important aspect of the design phase are the investment priorities. The investment priorities must be clearly addressed by the policymakers, keeping in mind many alternatives. It is important to highlight this since the use of financial instruments is often cast in terms of addressing a gap in access to finance. Typically, difficulties that SMEs have in accessing loan or investment capital. However, grants can also be used to address gaps in access to finance, and the key issue here lies not in the objective of funding per se, but rather in what difference the delivery mechanism can make to the achievement of that objective and wider policy effects. Three principal benefits of financial instruments as opposed to grants are conventionally highlighted. First, financial instruments are more sustainable because funds are repaid, creating a legacy to invest again. Importantly, however, the scale of returns depends not only on the presence of sufficient numbers and scale of viable projects that are not commercially funded, but also on the extent to which management costs and fees, defaults and losses erode returns. Second, financial instruments can improve project quality. This may be partly through the due diligence involved in private sector project assessment, but also because the recipient is more focused on project viability because of the obligation to repay. There is also a psychological dimension as both investee and investor share the risk. Third, and related to the sustainability argument, financial instruments can make more cost-effective use of public funds, partly because funds may be recycled, but also because of their potential to attract private funds. It is important to note that financial instruments are not suitable for all types of intervention. There should be a presumption in favor of using financial instruments in support of SMEs, but the grants may be the appropriate in 4 scenarios. For early-stage research and development, to encourage change in behavior, such as investment in energy-saving measures. At key points in their development, for social enterprises and charities, addressing a viability gap to enable a project to proceed. Regarding the sectors which would benefit the most from financial instruments, the alternative goals that potentially meet these criteria are innovation, where substantial additional capital may be needed to validate and commercialize new products, process or services, but where private market players are either unable to bear the level of risk involved or unable to assess it. Support for SMEs, where different segments of the market face different challenges in accessing finance, which may lead to underinvestment. Energy efficiency, where cost savings may accrue only over the very long term and may be subject to cultural barriers among private investors geared towards income generation rather than cost optimization projects. Renewable energy, where large upfront capital investment are required. But projects require specialized appraisal and long-term financial returns are sensitive to change in policies on tariffs. Urban development, where projects which are individually insufficiently financially viable to access market funding may share risks with an urban development fund and generate wider benefits for disadvantaged areas. The fourth important aspect of the design phase is the ex-ante assessment for the introduction of financial instruments. The requirements of the ex-ante assessments are as follows: an analysis of market failures, suboptimal investment situations, and investment needs for policy areas, thematic objectives, and investment priorities to be done with a view to contribute to the achievement of specific objectives set out under a priority and to be supported through financial instruments. An assessment of the added value of the considered financial instruments to be supported from the ESI funds, consistency with other forms of public intervention addressing the same market, possible state aid implications, the proportionality of the envisaged intervention, and measures to minimize market distortion. An estimate of additional public and private resources to be potentially raised by the financial instrument down to the level of the final recipient, expected leverage effect, including as appropriate an assessment of the need for and level of preferential remuneration to attract counterpart resources from private investors, an assessment of lessons learned from similar instruments and ex-ante assessment and evaluation carried out by the member state in the past, and how these lessons will be applied in the future. The proposed investment strategy, including an examination of options for implementation arrangements, financial products to be offered, final recipients targeted, envisaged combination with grant support as appropriate. A specification of the expected results and how the financial instrument concerned is expected to contribute to the achievement of the specific objectives set out under the relevant priority or measure, including indicators for that contribution. Provisions allowing for the ex-ante assessment to be reviewed and updated as required during the implementation of any financial instrument which has been implemented based upon such assessment, where during the implementation phase the managing authority considers that the ex-ante assessment may no longer accurately represent the market conditions existing at the time of implementation. Also, the examination of the implementation options is a compulsory part of the ex-ante assessment. Implementation under shared management through an entrust entity. The managing authority could set up a financial instrument at national, regional, transnational, or cross-border level and entrust the implementation to other bodies, either directly to the European Investment Bank Group or to another financial intermediaries. Implementation under shared management through investment in capital of existing or newly created legal entity. Managing authorities could implement financial instruments in the form of direct investments in the capital of existing or newly created legal entities, including legal entities financed from other ESI funds. Implementation under shared management of loans or guarantees, directly or through an intermediate body. The managing authority could also directly implement loans or guarantees without the formal setup of a fund. It is most likely that this option will be used for cases where there are a limited number of interventions, not enough to justify the establishment of a standalone fund. It should be noted that this option may not be possible in all member states. It is subject to national law, which will need to explicitly allow for the MA to issue loans and guarantees. In certain cases, there may be national legislation prohibiting parabanking. Contribution of ESIF programs allocation to EU-level instruments or to EU-level instrument for SMEs initiative only. This allows the MA to save time and resources on the setup phase, but the decision to make a contribution had to be based on the ex-ante assessment, just as for the other implementation options. And this is all for this fourth video of the finMED capacity building tool. I invite you to continue the training with the video number 5. For more information about finMED project and its capacity building tool, please visit the project website, in which you can find much more information, documents, news, and also links to the InterregMed program.